and welcome. My name is Jocelyn Whipple, and I am a TA for LSAT Unplugged with Steve Schwartz. Tonight, I will be your host for this hour. During the interview, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. If you wish to remain anonymous, please send those questions to me directly. With that being said, let me introduce our guest for this evening. It is my pleasure to welcome to the LSAT Unplugged community, Jimmi Nicholson, the Director of Admissions at University of Kentucky, J. David Rosenberg College of Law. Welcome, Director.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
So my first question for you is, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why admissions? Why go into admissions?
So, as said, my name is Jimmi. I joined the University of Kentucky community in 2016. I made it to Kentucky from Ohio, but I am native of New Orleans, Louisiana, and I left New Orleans and went to college all the way up in Wisconsin. And the weather got me. And so as soon as I could leave there and start heading south, I did. So while Wisconsin was a beautiful state and I had a great undergraduate experience, cold weather and I were not good friends. So at least the weather's a little bit more temperate in Kentucky. I started my journey in admissions as an undergraduate at my alma mater, University of Wisconsin-Parkside, as an ambassador, and I also did orientation. But once I graduated college, I had a long career in student affairs and diversity services, and I re-entered the admissions world when I worked at Ohio State as the assistant director for admissions and diversity and inclusion for their law school. And I haven't looked back. So I started that in 2001. I love admissions work. I love assisting students on their journey, whether it is to my law school or another law school. I just enjoy the work that I do.
That is so awesome. With that being said, I want to kind of jump into some questions and the overall process to go ahead and get us started. So I understand that UK's admissions deadline was April 30th. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So our application just closed. So we switched to the April 30th deadline about 2 years ago to give more students an opportunity to apply, especially with all the changes in the LSAT dates. Once they added an April LSAT, we wanted to give students who took the April LSAT an opportunity to apply to our law school. So with an April 30th deadline, it is asked that students apply by the 30th, even if they don't have the LSAT, and then let the LSAT score, catch up with them and complete them out. And then we will review the file once the LSAT score is in.
That's awesome that you guys are giving prospective students the opportunity to take the LSAT, get their scores up, GPA, get all of those things in line before applying. And so that is really awesome. How was the past admission cycle for you guys? I've heard a lot of stories, some good, some bad. So tell us, how has it been for you guys?
It has definitely been an interesting admissions cycle. I know many students have heard about the dramatic increase in applications to graduate and professional schools across the country. The average increase in applications for most law schools is about 30 to 35%. But for the Kentucky schools, we're a much smaller community. So our average increase in apps was only between, I would say, 15 to 20% for any of the Kentucky law schools. There are 3 law schools in Kentucky, University of Kentucky, University of Louisville, and Northern Kentucky has a law school. So yeah, so it wasn't mad crazy, but the pool was a lot more competitive. What I have noticed with the LSAT Flex is a much higher increased score in LSAT scores. We're just now starting to see some data about the LSAT Flex, but I have my own theories of why we're seeing an increase in scores. I think some students are just far more comfortable taking it in their desired location versus a testing center, and that has given some ease and removed some stress that is normally there on test day for students. So one of the things that we did at UK, because we understand that students, not all students have access to Wi-Fi or solid Wi-Fi. So we did open up the law school to UK undergraduates who were taking the LSAT, and they could take it at the law school in one of our classrooms or study rooms.
That is amazing. Wow. So you said a lot of things. So let's kind of unpack that there. So you said that there's not only been an increase, so you guys have been a part of that trend of just increasing applicants, not as much as some schools,
Mhm.
but you've yet, you're feeling that increase. And you talked about, you found it more competitive. Why is that?
Um, I think a couple reasons. The current climate that we're in of social justice
Mm,
and just everything that's going on, how COVID has shown the disparities in the health system and a whole host of things have um, made a lot of people realize that they want to go to law school. Some students that may have never ever thought that they would want to go to law school, before. So that has expanded the pool. So I have also seen like an increase in age or time removed from undergrad, with people coming to law school a little bit later, which usually with my pool in Kentucky is usually dominated by students who are directly out of undergrad choosing to matriculate to law school. But I've seen a lot more students who've taken a couple years off work experience or on their second career because they've been impacted by something that's going on in today's world that has inspired them to go to law school.
Do you find that students who kind of wait, had some life experience, work experience, whatever have you, do you find that they are doing better, or do you find that it just they have the same outcomes as those that are directly fresh out the gate from undergrad?
I think that depends on who you ask. So,
Yes, yes.
depending on the class, depending on the faculty member, depending on the admission advisor, I think the advantage of students who have worked for some time and choosing to come to law school, what intimidates those who are coming directly out of undergrad doesn't quite intimidate those with post-bachelor experience, because those who've worked a full-time job understands the pressure. They understand how to structure their day, and how to be ready and prepared. They have dealt with difficult people on the job. I think they're somewhat a little bit more prepared and maybe not as naive. I think students who have taken some time off are a lot more realistic about the demands and the costs and the debt that they're taking on when they're choosing to come to law school.
That's key information, more realistic about life goals
Mhm.
and how and their approach. Whereas
Yeah, I'm
you
not
might say
saying
that.
those who are coming directly out of undergrad are not realistic, but sometimes I think we all, both those who are directly out of undergrad and those with post-baccalaureate experience, kind of fantasize law school, right? About what it's
Definitely.
gonna be like because of what other people have said, or movies, or TV shows, that some can sometimes glamorize law school and the profession, so.
Right, I totally understand that. So my next question, I guess, as a follow-up is, do you foresee the next admission cycle to be just as busy, or do you think
Hmm.
it's a, one stop, this is just for now, and then it's, going to go down, or where do you see this take going?
I can see the next cycle being an uptick in admissions, because of still what's going on in today's world. But as we start to return back to some normalcy, most law schools did everything virtually this year, and virtual recruitment seems like it would be easier, but it's a lot more challenging. I'd much rather pack my bag and get in my car or get on an airplane and go to a site and meet students versus meeting them virtually. But and I think as we get back out there, there's going to be other students eager to come to in-person events. and come to visit the law schools. And I think that is going to yield a few more applications, because the other reason is that there are some people who have put their law school dreams on hold because they didn't want to do the virtual experience for their first year of law school, or have a hybrid experience, because that's a lot of the type of questions that I get right now. Do you know if you're going to be fully in person in the fall, or not, so because a lot of students want that full in-person experience.
Definitely. And actually, that is one of the questions I was going to ask you. So you're already reading my mind, right? So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about UK, right? The class
Yeah.
size. So it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have under 400 students. Is that correct?
Across all 3 years, you are absolutely correct. So, University of Kentucky is the flagship law school for the state. We pride ourselves in our intimate class size and seeing students rise to their personal best. We typically enroll an entering class between 120 to 130, and that's what I like about UK. For those who want to be in an intimate setting for law school, but want to still be on a large state university campus with the sports and all that type of fun stuff like that, the UK is definitely a great fit in that regard. So like when we do our sectioning, our legal research and writing clubs, I have about 8 to 10 students in those classes. Your biggest section may only have about 40 to 50 students.
Wow. So the class sizes are very small. I
Yeah,
find
so
that
we
very
average
attractive.
about 11 to 1 student to faculty ratio. So, and I think that's a great size.
That is definitely a great size. Can you talk about the advantages of having a smaller class size opposed to larger class sizes for especially the 1L experience?
Yeah, so it's kind of like Cheers. Everybody knows your name. I may be dating myself with that response. So that's one of the things that is great about choosing a small law school. Your faculty know you, your administrators know you. Not only do you know the students in your section, you know students in other sections. This is definitely the type of environment that you will find your lifelong friends and be in each other's weddings and become godparents to each other's children, and maybe even open up a practice together. Pre-COVID, I really enjoyed the fact that myself and other administrators and faculty members opened their homes to students. I usually have a little back to school cookout at my house, to get to know the students. We usually do book clubs, and the students who read the books, the faculty members will host a book club at their house, and other little events. We do a lot of stuff in the community as well. This is Kentucky. We're about horses and we're about bourbon. So the local track here in Lexington is Keeneland. And there are races here in the fall and the spring, and we usually gather at Keeneland for the fall and spring meet, our students with our faculty and our alumni. And of course, when you are at an athletic school, even though football is not our sport at UK, we still tailgate. And, our alumni and faculty come and join the students at those events. So it is definitely a close-knit environment where not only are there social things, but our students have the opportunity to become research assistants. A lot of faculty members refer students on for clerkships and other job opportunities, both in Kentucky and outside of Kentucky, when they know they have good students who are going to be good fit for those opportunities. So I think that is some of the many great benefits of being in an intimate environment for law school.
Definitely. Can you talk about how that translates in terms of your alumni, right? Your alumni
Mhm,
network, is close knit because a lot of people know each other.
mhm.
Um, and also, I found out that one of your notable alum is in the Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell. So I thought that was amazing.
Yes.
I'm into all
Well,
things government. So I'm like, whether you love it or hate it, I think that is an amazing, and that attests to the excellence that the school
mhm.
has, is that you can navigate your way even to Congress.
Mhm. And so have 8 of our former governors have also been University of Kentucky Law alumni. At one point, many of the Kentucky Supreme Court justices were UK Law alumni. So we definitely are well represented throughout the state of Kentucky. but we have alumni practicing in all 50 states. I often share with students, if you want to find the largest concentration of UK law alum, if you go as far north as Chicago, over to Texas, and then over to Florida, make that little triangle. That's where you'll find the bulk of us, but we're literally everywhere. And so like this year, some of our graduates, I know we have a student who is going to be practicing in Boston. I have another student who's going to be clerking with a judge in Alaska.
Wow.
I know a couple students are going down to Florida, but there's also great opportunities right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And we really hope that many of our students do stay because the Commonwealth needs them.
Definitely, definitely. So I want to switch gears again a little bit and talk about, diversity and inclusion. And I know you have a background in that. So as you mentioned earlier, the climate right now, social justice and minority applicants are looking for safe spaces,
Mhm.
really. And on your website, you guys announced the first Black editor in chief for the Kentucky Law Journal. So I was like so excited. In
Yes.
addition to that, your law journal is like the 10th oldest in the nation. So
Mhm.
can you speak to, how the UK law community is embracing diversity and inclusion in the culture of the school and definitely, as to your background?
Absolutely. Not only will we have the first African American woman as editor in chief of the Kentucky Law Journal, our other journal, which is the Equine Journal, is also going to be headed up by a woman, a Latino woman. So both of our journals are going to be women led and women of color this academic year. And that I'm very, very excited about that. Um, I think the University of Kentucky as a whole has been striving to not only increase diversity in the students, but also in faculty and staff, that there's reputation across the board. And I think they have also done their best to enhance the programming and services for diverse students, not only students of color, but also our LGBTQ students. We have recently opened up a center for LGBTQ students that has gained national notoriety for the type of programs that they're doing in that office. And it's not even that old. I would say that office is only about 8 years old, if even. I came in 2016 and it was relatively new then. So it's probably about as old as I am at the university. So, and at the law school, you probably heard a lot of people come and discuss law school, talk about the silo environment. While we are part of a greater university and on the Lexington campus with all of the other professional schools, so all of our professional schools are on the one campus at UK. We do a lot of insular things as well that promotes diversity and inclusion at the law school. So we have hired a chief diversity officer, which is Assistant Dean Danny Murphy. We also created a diversity committee, which is comprised of faculty, and they do a whole host of programming for the students. They always select a book for the summer. They're always a part of orientation when we bring our students in. We're getting them prepared for the year and talking about diversity issues and inclusion issues. Our new dean is actually a woman. She's the first woman dean of the law school, Dean Mary Davis, and she is amazing. She has created a diversity, equity, and inclusion student advisory board who has been reviewing some of the policies at the law schools and services at the law schools and how we can have a more inclusive and welcoming environment at the law school. And I think that's fantastic. And in addition to a whole host of other things. And these students have came up with amazing ideas in terms of hiring practices, in terms of programming and services, a whole host of things that they have come up with. And that was new this year, that was created in light of everything that was happening in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was a University of Kentucky student. So we hosted a whole symposium at the law school regarding the Breonna Taylor case. So the university also hosted a Stop Asian Hate rally on campus. So, and Lexington is really going through a renaissance period. We benefited from having the first openly gay mayor in Kentucky, and a fairness ordinance was created. And the thanks to the fairness ordinance also tied in what was happening at the university. So I think it is a good place. There's always room to grow, always room to do more things, but I think we're headed in the right direction. We have definitely seen our diversity student applications increase at the University of Kentucky, along with the enrollment of diverse students at not only the undergraduate level, but also at the law school. So those are things that I'm very proud of and I'm happy to be a part of. And I do, as the admissions director, right, we do all we can to make sure that we have a diverse group of students. So not only in terms of racial, ethnic diversity, but also in terms of social economic status. One of the things that I'm also proud of about University of Kentucky is that we have a large population of students who are first in family at our law school. So in terms of first generation students, that's a pretty sizable group of our students. And that's not very common for law schools to have a large population first in family. And then also recognizing that we are part of Appalachia and what that means for the Commonwealth and making sure that we have representation from the Appalachian region. So we do a part of our affinity student organizations. Of course, we have BALSA and LAWSA, but we also have an Appalachian Law Student Association as well.
That is incredible. First of all, I have to say that. And I guess a follow-up question to that, just with your just of experience dealing with, diversity inclusion. What are some markers for students in general that are, looking and comparing law schools and that sort of thing? What are some good markers for folks when trying to check, I guess, their diversity and inclusion as status for the schools? Like, what are some things that students should be looking for that marks, a law school that is actually striving towards diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so one of the questions I always get asked by students of color is, what is your diversity percentage? I could tell you that number all day, but that really means nothing. You can have students in the number, but engagement is a different story. You know what I mean? So you definitely have box checkers, but in students who are not engaged. So you have to determine not only what the number is, but what type of environment you're looking for in terms of diversity. You know what I mean? So are the students actively engaged? Are there programming and services that are of interest to you? Is there a place of worship for you in that area? Is your faith even recognized? What is the university's response to bias and racism, on the campus? Those are all things you should be paying attention to, in addition to what are the numbers. So I ask that students dig deeper beyond the surface of asking an admissions professional, what's your diversity percentage or how many diverse students you have, and ask more questions about what type of services is available and how the university responds to bias and racism.
That is awesome. So keyword here, my hearing is engagement. Is that a
Mhm,
correct? Okay,
mhm.
so folks be looking out for engagement. That is
Yeah, because
key.
it's one thing to say, I'm going to use Black students because I'm Black. It's one thing to say, yeah, we have 12% of our students are Black, but you don't see any programs that are happening for Black History Month or discussions about what's happening with Black women in the law profession. Things that make sense for you, right? So, but that's another beauty of when you're looking at law schools that are attached to a larger university, you not only get to tap into those programs and services that are happening in the building itself, you also have the greater university. So while we have a chief diversity officer and a diversity committee and a DEI board, at the law school, there's also the MLK Center at UK. There's also the Gaines Center. There's also the Center for the Center for Graduate Diversity and Professional Student Services. There's also, the main university DEI office, and they all are doing things to make an inclusive environment at UK and making sure that students' needs are being met, and that they feel welcome on our campus.
That's awesome. So those are great tips, guys. Um, Especially in this climate, those
Mhm.
questions help lead, you know, and give you a roadmap of where to even look and what
Yeah.
questions to begin asking.
One of
So
my favorite things that UK does, they have, and I'm a woman, so this makes me happy. They have what's called sister circle forums, and they have one for undergraduate students and one for graduate and professional school students. And so it is a time for women of color to come together and kind of discuss what's going on with them. And then there's a conference, at the during spring semester that kind of culminates everything. But I've worked on a lot of college campuses, and I've never seen that, for students. And I think that's a great service that the university provides.
definitely that, and then that goes back to that safe space, right? Looking for a
Mhm,
safe space and having that circle, and also that support system, right? Because
mhm.
in law school, you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs, but it's important to
Absolutely.
have a support team. It's important
Mhm.
to have those that are cheering you on, and you can identify with each other, and that helped you to grow and helped you achieve your goal. So I think that is definitely key.
And that's the other thing that I like about when you're choosing a law school that's on a campus, that has other graduate and professional schools. It gives you an opportunity to meet other graduate and professional school students. So you get to break the routine of always being centered around law students, right?
Right,
So
right, right. And that too, it gives you a little break because
gives you a
you
little
have
break.
moments.
Yeah.
You need a break. You need self care, right? And so that
Yeah, self-care
also
is
is
very important. And that's,
part of that.
I didn't really didn't talk about that a lot, but that's another thing that I'm very proud of that we do well at UK, is paying attention to mental wellness, right? So we offer a lot of things at the law schools to help not only the students, but the faculty and the staff uh, stay balanced, if you will. So we do a Dean's Challenge where, students collect points every day for walking or, doing yoga or, a whole host of things. And, they win prizes at the end of the week. Pre-COVID, we used to have yoga in a courtroom on Mondays.
Okay.
There's all these workshops that Professor Grise, who's our academic success faculty member, puts on for students to help them stay balanced and keep them encouraged and motivated. And then also we have a center on campus that students can also utilize, and they have massage chairs over there. So you can schedule a time and you can go over there and get a massage in the chair. So I think all of those are important because I think mental health, mental wellness is really important for law students because you can work yourself so hard that you forget to take care of yourself. And I like that our faculty and our administrators are always reminding students to take care of themselves and be well because we want to see them graduate and be their best selves at the end of the 3 years of law school.
That is so awesome. So with that being said, I'm going to switch gears again and let's talk, about the admissions process, the classic personal statement, right?
Yes.
Um, so with that being said, I wanted to ask you, what are some do's and don'ts for the personal statement, just in general? I know, of course, you want to make sure, your spelling and your grammar and all of those things are tight, right?
Right.
But what are some other things that you tend to notice that people don't necessarily address for the do's and don'ts list?
Sure. The first thing I'm going to say underneath the do is follow the rules. So if a school says they want 3 pages double space, it's 3 pages double space. If they give you prompts, then answer the prompts, right? We understand that you're probably going to use the same personal statement for 99.99% of the law schools that you apply to. However, if there's one that asks specific questions, you want to make sure you're answering the questions that they ask you. Um, a, a lot of students try and tailor fit their personal statement to each law school. I'm mixed. I'm in the middle about it because most of the time students are regurgitating back to me what I already know from my website because I wrote it, right? So if
Okay.
you're gonna if you're gonna choose a tailor fit, I recommend using firsthand experiences. So like maybe it was an admissions person you met, or maybe it was a faculty member's research you read, or maybe you saw somebody on TV that went to that school, and not so much regurgitate back to us what I know. And then we can often tell when you swap the name out of the schools, you know, from University of Louisville to University of Kentucky. But, you know, we generally know that you just swap the name out. So that's never really, you know, that doesn't bode well in the review process. Another thing that students often do is regurgitate their resumes. We have your resume. We can see all the great things you've done. Your personal statement should really be used to share your story. So I have a little bit of a counseling background. So I always refer to it as your light bulb moment, right? Like, aha, I want to go to law school, right? So, you know, we want to hear that story. What sparked that interest, you know? And it could be something on your resume, but you want to hone in, you know, on that story and kind of tell us that story. Another thing students often do is try and throw too much in, and it's just scattered and it's all over the place. You know, this should have a flow, a pattern to it that is easy to read, that's going to captivate the reviewer's attention. Remember, reviewers are reading hundreds, if not thousands, of these things, and you want to captivate their attention. You want to keep it through your essay. Another thing that students will do is overshare. We understand that there are some
Mhm.
tragic things that may have happened to you, and that may have been your aha moment, or when your light bulb went off that you want to attend law school. But you have to be careful of what you share because you don't know what the reviewer's background and experiences that they have, and you don't want to cause any triggers, you know, in the reviewer, you know. So I say this when it comes to, we get a lot of essays about students who have unfortunately experienced sexual assault, or, you know, saw somebody die. And those are all very, very tragic stories. So just be careful on the amount of details that you share. And then the last one I'm going to say is, because I could talk about personal statements all day, is personal statements is not the place to talk about poor academic performance or poor LSAT performance. Your personal statement is prime real estate. This is your interview with the community, with the committee. You're interviewing your writing sample. This is your pitch to why we should allow you into our law school. If you are a student who retook the LSAT several times or had academic challenges in undergrad, such as I did, you know, that is not your place to really talk about that. You want to submit a one-page addendum to talk about your academic challenges or why you retook the LSAT several times to get to where you are.
So I'm so glad you stated that you're not necessarily a fan of naming the school in the personal statement. That has been a debate that I've had with many folks, you know, to do it or not to do it. And then, you know, ends up being a nightmare if you accidentally send the wrong personal
Oh, yes.
statement to
And
the wrong
we
person.
have received the wrong one. So, you know, Jeannie Powell is very kind. She is my admissions associate, and she's the person who processes our applications. And she will send a courtesy email to individuals when it has the wrong name. But many schools do not do that. But the thing about that, when she sends that email to you about, do you want to make changes? She puts a copy of that communication in your file. The original personal statement is still there, and then we'll add the updated one. So the committee does see both statements.
That is good to know, especially that students, you know, have a file, and when they add stuff to that, you know, it's this, the committee sees all of it.
Mhm.
So continuing with this personal statement, how would you suggest, or do you have any tips for folks um, to help them, I guess, share more information about themselves that's not redundant, right? So you mentioned
Mhm.
you receive a lot of information in the personal statement that they, have on their resume. And you're like, I can look at their resume and find that out. So how do you suggest people utilizing, that second essay? I believe you have two writing prompts: the personal statement, and then the second one being, why do you want to go to UK law, right?
Yeah, that's one of
So
the optional
optional
essays.
prompts. Yeah.
So yeah. So our personal statement at UK is pretty open. So we don't give any prompts or anything like that. So you're free to discuss whatever you want to discuss. So there's an activity that we do during our workshops for prospective students that we have them write 50 things about themselves and what interests them in law school. And we tell them there's certain things that they can't use, right? And these are the common things that students are going to write about is my parents said that I always argued with my siblings and I should go to law school. First of all, going to law school has nothing to do with arguments. So, we tell them they can't use that one. Another one, we tell them they can't use, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. You can't use that either, right? So, we put in there a couple of common things that we hear. You cannot use the frost form. So they really have to think about 50 things of why they want to go to law school. And then we tell them, think about your characteristics, what inspired you. So, dig deep and think about those things. And from there, you can generate what you want your story to be for law school, and that will help you with about not regurgitating your resume, coming up with fresh ideas or fresh topics to discuss in the personal statement that we necessarily wouldn't know from the application materials itself. So an example that I give about fresh information is, well, had I not said I was from New Orleans in the introduction, when you look at my educational background, you see that I went to undergrad in Wisconsin and I went to grad school in Illinois, right? And I worked a long time in Ohio. So one would automatically assume that I was from the Midwest. So somewhere in my statement, I will talk about being born and raised in New Orleans and being a Midwestern transplant, because what that's going to tell to the committee is that she took herself out of her comfort zone. She's exposed herself to the unfamiliar. And one of the things that being a lawyer is important is that you're going to be working with people from all different types of lifestyles and backgrounds who may not have the same experiences as you. So what that says about me, I've exposed myself to that, and I'm going to be open to it once I'm in the profession, or even in law school. Expanding my networks and operating outside of my circle, right? So those are the type of things you want to share, in your personal statement that we wouldn't necessarily know. That makes sense for your story.
Right, right. And so, you alluded to the addendum, right? Talking about,
Mhm.
not oversharing, or areas where, you don't want to put something in your personal statement, like such as the you talked about, your undergrad experience and academic challenges. Can you tell us a little bit more about how UK law views the addendum?
Sure. So at UK, we do a holistic file review process. So how it works at UK is once a student's file is complete, it is assigned to a committee member. So we review files weekly starting in November, and it just rolls until we're all out of applications, right, to review. And so we get, as a committee member, the files are divided. So let's say there's 100 files for that week. There's 7 of us on the committee. It's divided evenly amongst the 7 of us. We get a week to review it. We come to the committee meeting on Thursday, and we discuss each of those files. It's a very time consuming process, but it makes it fair in many ways. And it's looking at students beyond the numbers. And when I am personally reviewing a file, if I saw that someone had some academic challenges, they don't mention it in a personal statement. They don't write an addendum about it. When I discuss this file and I talk about the academics of the student, I would say, well, the student has a challenging GPA. I saw they had, because we see the transcripts, we see the score bands. I could say, it looks like they had a couple of rough semesters, but it was upward trending at the end. But I have no idea what was going on with them at that time to justify the challenging grades that semester.
Okay, so
And
it's
yeah, so we want to know, what was going on, what impacted you, because that'll help us look at that grade a little bit differently, or the cumulative GPA a little bit differently. So addendums always helps. It clears up a lot of things for us. Like, even if you took on our application, we asked, have you had any gaps in academic performance? That's not a question that's asked on every law school application, because some students do take time off because they may have financial challenges, or they may have academic challenges, or they may have gotten sick, right? And so when we see that and someone says, I got sick, I had brain surgery, I didn't withdraw in time because it was acute, that's why I have a whole semester of W's. Then you look at the grades a little bit differently, right? Versus no statement at all. Like, this person had brain surgery. Okay. So yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's
very
major.
important that, as I always share with students, it's very important that you share your story, because faculty members, I'm the only non-faculty member on the committee that's reviewing files and making admissions decisions. And faculty members, I think sometimes some of them may have forgotten what undergraduate life was like. Even though undergraduate life was a long time away from me, but I still remember some things and what it was like. And I understand life happens, but some faculty members would just assume, the student didn't want to put in the work that semester. You never want them to make that assumption, because then that will lead them to assume that you're not going to want to put in the work when you come to law school.
Right. So basically, you're saying the addendum enables you to leave no doubt on the
Exactly.
applicant's part.
Mhm.
Key phrase, leave no doubt, for many things in this life. So since we're talking a little bit about the addendum, can you talk about the addendum as it relates to reapplying applicants, and what instances should reapplying applicants utilize the addendum, and how long should it be? Because you don't want to, 2-page essay, right? You
Right.
want something short and to the point.
Addendum should never be more than a page. If you have more than one issue, you can choose to use a page for each issue, or you can combine, you know, all of the issues into one addendum if you want. It's totally up to you. Um, it's like I share with students, I love crime shows. I'm like, so when you want to think of an addendum as the snap version and not the lifetime version, right? Where lifetime used 2 hours for you to know that, a girl is going to be in trouble at the end of it, versus snap, everything you need to know in the first 5 minutes, and then they go through it in the next 45 minutes, right? So if you're a true crime person, you know these shows that I'm talking about.
I
But if
am.
you are if you are reapplying to a law school, if you're a reapplicant, couple things here. If you were denied or put on the wait list the first time, and you don't update anything in the file, you're probably going to be denied or waitlisted again the second time. Doesn't matter how early you apply in some regards, because you should always update the file. So whether that's you should always put in a fresh personal statement. If you wrote an addendum before, you want to update that. You want to freshen that up. You can reuse your letters of recommendation that you submitted before, but you probably want to get a brand new one from somebody else, right? So you want to freshen up the file, and you want to probably reinstate, you probably want to add an additional addendum in there expressing that, you are a reapplicant, you're really passionate about the school. If, given an opportunity, you would love to enroll in that particular program. I mean, it's not required to re-express yourself, but it's always good to know how interested a student is. Because each school does a little bit differently. Like we do have a box on our application that allows a student to select if they had applied before. And that's not always on everyone's application. So if you don't see that box, so asking if you have applied before, you might want to add an addendum to the file saying, you applied before. These are the things that you updated. These are the things that have changed. And you hope, they reconsider your application.
Definitely. And when you talk about, demonstrating interest for the reapplicant, does that also include maybe talking with the school or seeing if you can
Absolutely.
set up an
Talk with the
interview or
school,
something of that nature?
visit the school. I know that always makes a difference for me. Even with the students who are applying for the first time, students who we've talked to a lot or came to visit the law school, it always makes me smile when I see their application come through. And I'm like, oh, I hope they listened to everything I said.
That's the test. Did you listen? Did you follow instructions?
So, then we hope that if they're admitted, that they ultimately will choose our law school. And when we meet students, each law school admissions person, when they meet certain students, they say, yeah, Shakira, yeah, she's definitely a UK law student. She's, we already claim you as ours when we see that you're going to be a good fit for us. We may never say that to you personally, but that's what we're saying in our inner circle in the office. Like, she was really sweet. We enjoyed her visit. She's definitely going to fit in well here.
That is awesome. Now, I have to ask an LSAT question because, we are LSAT Unplugged,
Sure.
right? So, how does your office review the writing sample now with the LSAT Flex? You guys no longer have to, take a magnifying glass and actually read people's handwriting, but
Right, and
everything
decipher
is
people's handwriting.
exactly.
So I love the typed version. It definitely makes it easier to read. However, the writing sample does cause a delay in students' files being completed out if they don't complete it in a timely manner. So, because before, the writing sample was done at the same time as the exam, which is, no longer the case. But, how we use that writing sample in our review process is, that's pure writing, so we get to see how much work you put into your personal statement and other elements of the application, and it's funny because sometimes people's writing sample is better than the actual personal statement, but that's rare. But I will tell individuals to take the writing sample seriously because I have seen people who just type gibber jabbish in the writing sample, and they ultimately became denied because they didn't take it seriously, right? So all elements of the application is important.
Definitely. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the financial aspect.
Mhm.
Um, so how do you suggest folks approach law school offers? Are they really negotiations? I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to negotiate your way through," and I've heard a lot of some law school admissions officers say, "Maybe I would back off."
But I'm gonna put a little pause right there.
Yes,
So
yes.
first of all, at UK, we do not negotiate scholarships. We will reevaluate and reconsider scholarship offers, but there's no guarantee that you will get an increase. The thing that students need to know about law school is that law school is an expensive choice. And ultimately, you're going to have some skin in the game when it comes to paying for law school because unlike undergrad, everybody comes to law school is top notch. Everybody is smart. So getting a full ride is a lot more challenging, in law school, right? And law schools have finite budgets, We try not to exceed those budgets. Some law schools have more money than other law schools, right? So those offers are not always going to be apple to apples, oranges to oranges, because it depends on the budget, of the law schools. So when it comes to scholarship reconsiderations, there's a couple things you should know. So students will say, Shakira, I'm going to use you again because I just like saying your name. Let's say Shakira got admitted to UK and we offered her a scholarship. She may say, law school B admitted me, but they offered me more money. Are you willing to match it? Right? So first of all, the request should always be humble when you're asking a school to reevaluate your scholarship. Some schools have like processes, like forms you have to complete. And then there's some schools that won't do it at all. We don't have a form or anything at UK. We just ask that you're honest with sharing with us what your offers are so we can compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. The thing you should know about that offer from Law School B is that you may have got more money from them because you're probably a more competitive applicant in their pool, right? So if you're above the medians in that law school pool, you're probably going to get more money than if you're below the medians at my school, because we're offering these scholarships based off of merit. So that's purely LSAT and GPA. Then there's some diversity funds set aside for students who fall in the diversity elements, and it may see a little extra outside of their grid amount. And when I say diversity, I'm using that extremely broadly, definitely inclusive of racial ethnic diversity, but LGBTQ students, first gen, single parents, all fall into the Appalachian students fall into that diversity category at UK when we're awarding scholarships. So that's the first thing. So you may be a more competitive student in that pool. The second thing is that never ask a law school for more money if you don't intend on enrolling there. Because we can tell when students are trying to pit another law school against another law school to increase scholarship funds. I mean, law admissions world is a very, very small world. We all know each other, very well. I don't ever have to say any names, but a few descriptors, they may know exactly who I'm talking about. So only request if this is some place that if they have the funds to increase your scholarships, you are willing to enroll. I get a little frustrated with the students that we are able to increase their scholarships. Then they come back and ask me, is there any more? I feel like it's rude to ask for additional funds after your scholarship has already been increased. The other thing you have to understand about your law school scholarships is understanding what are the stipulations that law schools are asking for. So any school that is saying your scholarship is good with good academic standing, those are the best ones. That means you're never in threat of losing your scholarship dollars. Schools that will say your scholarship is good with academic standing of a 2.74. Sounds easy to you because you performed well in undergrad, not necessarily easy thing in law school. So that you need to understand what a 2.74 means at that school. So the next thing to ask is, so what is the curve? So the average student at UK is a 2.74, right? So that's what I use. That's why I use that GPA. So, but we say our scholarships are good with good academic standing of a 2.0. So that means no one is ever in threat. So when the average student is a 2.74, that means there's going to be people below that. So there's a good chance that you could lose your scholarship. So understand what the stipulation is. But what students don't take into consideration when they're looking at these scholarships goes towards tuition and fees. Scholarships does not include cost of living. So I could have given you $15,000, which may not sound like much off in $25,000 in in-state tuition, but another school on the East Coast has given you $30,000 off and $50,000. Sounds like you're getting more money, but you're really not getting that much more money than what you're getting at UK. And you're going to end up borrowing more because of the cost of living in that area. And students never take into the full assessment of cost of living. Whereas my scholarship dollars may not have been as high as that East Coast school, but it's very affordable to live in Kentucky. You know, you can get a nice apartment for $600 a month, right? So
Right.
versus a closet on the East Coast for $1,500 a month, right? So you have to look at what it's going to cost for you. Access Lex offers a great resource for students on their website to help them understand the budget and how much money they need and keeping your debt down low. But I know debt is really important, but sometimes it behooves you to look beyond the debt. And if it costs you a little bit more to get a quality legal education, I think is worth it because not all law schools, I hate to say it, are created equal. And there are things that you have to look at, such as bar passage rate, job placement, are those students going to areas you want to go? Or do you want to even practice in that state? Those things are really, really important to look at. So sometimes it's not in your best interest to take the full ride if a school isn't meeting those standards of strong bar passage rates, strong job placement rates, strong alumni network, may not have the type of things that you are looking for and, and want to do after you get your law degree.
Well, thank you so much for that information. And I wanted to also make a note that UK's been named in the top 10 for best value law school in the nation by the National Jurist magazine. So in terms of bar passage rates, as far as, the low cost, low debt, right, and low tuition, and as far as passing the bar, you guys are really meeting that. And the
Yeah,
students.
UK is doing great things. There was just a report listed about bar passage rates of all ABA approved law schools, and UK was ranked 24 on that list. So we're doing really well. We also have a very high, strong number of students who go on to do clerkships from our program, and that's due in part to our Hayburn initiative and the work of our career development team. And many of our faculty members too are helping our students get those amazing clerkships when they graduate. So yeah, for a small program, we're doing really, really well.
Definitely, definitely. Well, the time just really flew by.
Yes, it did. It's
Um,
already been an hour. I can't believe it.
I know, right? So I want to actually take this time to give you a chance to address anything or to leave some final thoughts with folks. And can you also put your email in the chat so folks can
I certainly
contact you
can.
and reach out to you, especially those that are interested in going to UK. So yeah,
Type in
your email.
my email right now. So I guess my final words of advice to prospective law students is never go into your LSAT exam thinking you're going to retake it. The LSAT is incredibly expensive. It's $200. I have a full-time job and I don't want to give away $200. Really go in with it with positive energy. Like do all the prep that you need to do. Like use this service, and other services so that you do well the first time and don't have to retake the LSAT. And never rule yourself out. If there's a school that you are really interested in going to and you may think your credentials may not allow you to be valuable in that particular pool, call and talk to the admissions office. They will tell you, what you need to do to be valuable in the pool if you need to retake, or if you need to increase your GPA or, whatever it is, so never rule yourself out. And then my last piece of advice is keep an open mind. Never say to yourself, oh, I wouldn't go to that school if it was the last school on earth, or I wouldn't ever see myself living in Kentucky. I often say to people, you really have no choices until you apply and get admitted to schools. Then you have choices. So until then, you don't know who's going to admit you. You don't know who's going to give you a competitive scholarship, or who may impress you at that particular school. I'm a people person, so I'll always say to people, find a school that's your people that you can see yourself being with for 3 years, in a setting that you feel like you can be in for 3 years. So keep an open mind, and look at as many law schools as you possibly can. I mean, don't apply to a gazillion of them. I talked to a young man the other day who told me he was waitlisted at 8 schools. I was like, how many did you apply to? He was like 20. I was like, oh, that's incredibly expensive. And you don't really need to apply to that many law schools. You can easily narrow down your list. And I think as the country begins to open back up, and as law schools begin to open back up, visiting, meeting the people, talking with the faculty, talking with the students is really going to help you decide if that's where you want to go. Like, I was pleasantly surprised by Lexington, Kentucky. This is the cutest little place that I've ever lived. It's not a large city, but I have everything I need, including a Target and a shopping mall, and lots of, I'm a Black woman. I'm serious about my hair. So lots of salons.
Absolutely.
From, but you wouldn't know it unless you came here. This is definitely a foodie city, and great places to eat. And you within a half a day's drive of half of the US population. I mean, so many places you can get to quickly, down in Nashville in 3 hours, over to Asheville, North Carolina. I mean, so many good places you get to relatively quickly. So yeah, visit, meet the people, don't rule anything out, and never rule yourself out of these schools without talking to someone and submitting an application.
All right. Well, the final word is don't rule yourself out. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Please remember, this session will be recorded. So if you would like to refer to it again, it's going to be on YouTube. Also, check out the LSAT Unplugged channel for more interviews and tips on navigating your law school admissions journey. Thank you, everyone, so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.